Hey everybody, Pigeon back with another deck. Just gonna go over another casual deck before I hop into some of the CDH stuff and talk about different things. Today I'm gonna talk about one of my more powerful casual decks, the one I've been enjoying the most, which is Caesar Legion's Emperor. Probably gonna mess that up a couple times this video. But real quick, I'll run over what the commander does. So for colorless red, white, black, you get a legendary creature, Human Soldier 4/4. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, choose two. You either get to create two 1/1 red and white soldier creature tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking. You could draw a card and lose a life, or Caesar can deal damage equal to the number of creature tokens you control to target opponent. So the big thing with this deck is going to be creating a large amount of creature tokens, being able to swing at people and overwhelm the board with the effect of Caesar's bottom part, but also being able to function as just an aggro deck in general to kind of overwhelm the overall board. So I'm just going to run through some of these creatures. I will kind of brief down some of them into just kind of the theory or the thought of what they're doing and why they're in the deck. And some of them I'll go over a little bit longer. So Adeline, Resplendent, Cathar, one colorless, two white, human, knight, vigilance. It's a star and four because the star is the number of creatures you control. Whenever you attack for each opponent, you create a 1/1 human tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. A Nim Pakal, one colorless, red, white, human soldier, 1/2. When you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, you get to put a +1 counter on a Nim. Then you get to create X 1/1 colorless artifact gnomes that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of counters on a Nim. So this will be kind of one of the pieces you'll see, or at least styles for the deck, is you're able to attack with any token, then you're able to trigger Caesar to sacrifice it to do the abilities, and you're also able to trigger this first. So you're able to use that same token that you attacked with to trigger this, to put a counter on it, to create 2 or 3 soldiers that are tapped and attacking. Then you're able to shoot somebody with the number of tokens that you can, creature tokens that you control. Archivist of Ogma, colorless and a white. It's a halfling cleric flash. Whenever an opponent searches their library, gain a life and draw a card. So card draw. It's good. Baron Bertram Greywater, two colorless, white, black, vampire, noble, 3/4. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 black vampire rogue creature token with lifelink. Triggers only once a turn. You could pay 1 and a black, sacrifice a creature or an artifact to draw a card. So this is kind of like one of the perfect pieces for the deck. I get more tokens, I get card draw, and I get a 3/4 blocker, which is pretty decent. Blood Artist, colorless and a black vampire. Whenever it or another creature dies, target opponent loses a life. You gain a life. Boromir, Warden of the Tower, two colorless, one white. Legendary creature, human soldier, vigilance 3/3. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Usually not super relevant for the power level that this deck is playing at, but still a pretty decent card value piece to have out. And the bottom part being the big piece. When you could sacrifice it, and then creatures you control get indestructible until the end of the turn. The ring tempts you. So protection against a board wipe. Pretty nice. Braids, Arisen Nightmare. Colorless to black. Nightmare 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, you can sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. Each opponent has the option to also do that. If they don't, each of those opponents lose 2 life and you draw a card. So card draw again. Pretty good, turns out. Bruce Tarl, Boorish Herder, two colorless, red, white, human ally 3/3. When it enters or attacks, target creature you control gains double strike and lifelink. Commissar Severin. This guy on the board, or on the screen in front of you. Colorless, white, and a black, human soldier. Leading from the front, so whenever it attacks, each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. You could pay 2, sacrifice another creature, gain 2 life, and draw a card. So, newest piece I added to the deck. Obviously, if you couldn't tell from me mispronouncing it, I haven't even played with it yet. But, in theory, it attacking with 10 other tokens gets to drain everybody for 10. which is pretty good. Dark Confidant, colorless and a black. Human Wizard, 2/1. Beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card, lose life equal to its mana value. Denethor, Human Noble, 2/4. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, create a 1/1. So if you use Caesar's top ability, or if you sacrifice to use Caesar's ability at all, you're guaranteed to get a 1/1 at your end step. And you can also pay to sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses a life, you gain 1. So nice in a pinch. Alendra the Dusk Rose, 2 colorless, 1 white, 1 black, Vampire Knight, 1/1 with a lifelink. Seems bad, but whenever another creature dies, you put a +1 counter on Alendra, and then when Alendra dies, you get X 1/1s, where X is her power. And those 1/1s are white vampires with lifelink. So this is a nice piece to have out, just building up value, because every time our commander triggers, we're sacrificing something. This is just going to get larger. Also, important to remember that a couple of those creatures I just said sacrifice a creature. So you can actually sacrifice this at instant speed to be able to create blockers if you need to. Esper Sentinel, 1 white. Human Soldier, 1/1. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, they have to pay X or else you get a draw card where X is its power. Ishin, 2 heavens is 1. Red, white, black, human samurai. If a creature attacking would cause a triggered ability to trigger, triggers an additional time. So very good piece for this deck. Kalitas, Trader of Get. This is another secret lair art. 2 colorless, 2 black, Vampire Warrior, 3/4 with a lifelink. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead and create a 2/2 zombie. And you can pay 2 and a black, sacrifice another vampire or zombie to put 2+1 counters on it. But usually it's there to just help create tokens and be a graveyard hate piece, which is also very nice. Kambal, Council of Allocation. Colorless, white, and black, human advisor, 2/3. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2, you gain 2. So just a good value piece. Kambal, Profiteering Mare. This is what I've considered tearing apart Caesar to be, but I do like this piece enough where I'm like, this is very good just in the 99 of the deck. It's at 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 black. Human Advisor, 2/4. Whenever one or more tokens would enter the battlefield under opponent's control for the first time each turn, you're going to copy that many. So if they have something that creates them 10 1/1s, you're going to get 10 1/1s. Very, very good piece. But the bottom piece is even more impactful than that. Whenever one or more tokens would enter the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. So being able to go to combat and get some of these triggers to go off is going to quickly drain your entire opponent's life total down. Carter, Doomscourge, another just nice value piece for the deck. 2 colorless, black, red. Enters battlefield until your next turn. Creatures your opponents control are basically goaded. They have to attack someone other than you. And whenever an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. So the bottom part is the stagnant ability. It's just going to be there. Anytime an attacking creature dies, you're going to drain and gain. Lord Skitter, Sewer King, 2 colorless, 1 black, Rat Noble, 3/3. Whenever another rat enters battlefield under your control, exile a card from an opponent's graveyard. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to create a rat that can't block. But it basically means every single combat you're guaranteed to create 1 token, which is going to exile something, again, out of someone's graveyard. So nice graveyard hate piece, but mostly it's there to be able to create a token. I just like most of my pieces that are gaining things, they're creating tokens to also be good value pieces. Loyal Apprentice, colorless and a red, human artificer, haste 2/1. To begin a combat on your turn, you control your commander. You get a 1/1 Thopter with haste until the end of turn. So, and flying, sorry. So this is just going to be another value piece that sits there and creates you tokens. Luminous Broodmoth, surprise, surprise, I put it in every deck that has white in it pretty much. 2 colorless, 2 white, insect, 3/4 flying. Whenever another creature dies, if it didn't have flying, return it to the battlefield under its opponent's control. Or under its owner's control with flying. That'd be crazy if it went under opponent's control. Almost nothing in this deck flies. So almost every single piece that dies is going to come back with flying, which is absolutely bonkers for this deck. Mahadi, Emporium Master, colorless, black, and a red. Cat Devil, 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each creature that died this turn. So being able to go through and just do a couple of these is going to give you a ton of treasures that, by the way, enter untapped, but also that's still going to trigger things like Cabal. Important to know that the treasure tokens are not creature tokens, so it isn't going to trigger his bottom ability. But getting those treasures is going to help you play more things, which is going to give you more tokens, which is going to help you close out the game. Mirkwood Bats, bonkers card for the deck. 3 and a black, bat, 2/3 with flying. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses a life. So this is just bonkers. Mondrak, Glory Dominus, 2 colorless, 2 white, Phyrexian Horror. If you were to create a token, create twice that many tokens instead. And you could pay 1 and 2 Phyrexian white, sacrifice 2 other artifact and or creatures, put an indestructible counter on it, which is usually not that hard to do. We usually have a lot of things just laying around. But being able to double up on your tokens turns out pretty good. Morbid Opportunist, 2 colorless, 1 black, human rogue, 1/3. Whenever one or more creatures die, draw a card, triggers once per turn. So important to remember this. It just, whenever a creature dies, different creature of course, but this also is going to trigger on your opponent's creatures. Myrel, Shield of Argive, 3 colorless, 1 white, human soldier, 3/4. Opponents can't cast spells, activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments during your turn. Important to remember, it is cast spells or activate abilities of those 3. So lands and different things can still kind of affect your turns. But usually it's, it's pretty good. It's kind of like a grand abolisher effect. Whenever it attacks, you create X1/1s, colorless soldier artifact creature tokens, where X is the number of soldiers you control. So not really a big soldier theme in the deck. I am considering upping the amount of soldiers to be able to help out a little more with these kind of things, but you're still going to be able to create a couple, which is still going to help out a bunch. And some of the things in the deck just happen to be soldiers. Matter Weaver, 2 colorless, 1 white, human artificer, 2/4. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you can either create a 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature token, or create a token that's a copy of a target artifact token you control. So being able to create some Thopters and different pieces like that's very nice, but just in general, every time you cast a creature, get a token is gas for this deck. Pitiless Plunder, 3 colorless, 1 black, human pirate, 1/4. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get a treasure token. So being able to go to combat, attack, sacrifice one of your tokens, draw a card, gain a treasure, create 2 that are tapped and attacking, shoot somebody, you can see how this kind of snowballs out. Roaming Throne, 4 colorless, golem, 4/4 with ward 2. When it enters, choose a creature type. Whenever an ability of that creature type triggers, it triggers an additional time. In this deck, as you probably have caught on, it's got a human sub-theme. You'll see why pretty soon, but you're going to want to say human so you can double up on all your human triggers. Rose, Cutthroat Raider, 2 colorless, 2 red, robot, 3/2 first strike. And it has raid. At the end of combat on your turn, if you attacked this turn, create a junk token for each opponent you've attacked. And whenever you sack a junk, you get a red. The junk is tap, sacrifice, and then you exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card this turn. So it's got mana on it. It's got card value. Just kind of a good thing in general. Plus, the junk tokens are still tokens, so they still trigger things like Mirkwood Bats and still get doubled by Mondrak. Sunid, Sleeper's Scourge. Colorless, red, white, black, human knight, 2/4 menace. Other legendary creatures you control have menace. And most importantly, whenever you play a legendary land or cast a legendary spell, you may draw a card and lose 1 life. Teysa Karlov, 2 colorless, 1 white, 1 black, human advisor, 2/4 that doubles death abilities. And creature tokens gain vigilance and lifelink. Another little piece in the deck that I was kind of like, I guess not aware of when I first was building it, and then I read it again and was like, oh yeah, completely forgot this card exists. A card I did not forget is Thalis Reverent Medium, 3 colorless, 1 white, 1 black, human cleric, 3/4. At the beginning of each end step, create X1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of tokens you created this turn. This is originally what the deck was and how I had it built before Caesar was spoiled. The amount of work that this card does alone is insane. Being able to just move to an end step, because this is each end step, and being able to create 10 flyers is nuts. It's insane. Welcoming Vampire, 2 and a white, Vampire flying 2/3. Whenever one or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card, triggers once each turn. Just a great value piece. Sometimes you're creating tokens on other people's turns, so those little tokens from creatures dying on opponents' turns and stuff like that are all going to give you card draw and work into the rest of this deck. Whisper, Blood Liturgist, I think. 3 colorless, 1 black, human cleric, 2/2. You can tap it, sacrifice 2 other creatures to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is really just a great piece to trigger some of our death pieces, and also to be able to turn 2 tokens we don't care about into a piece like Cabal or Mirkwood Bats that's going to help us win the game. Here's why it's got a huge human package, because of Winota Joiner of Forces. 2 colorless, 1 red, 1 white. Human Warrior 4/4. Whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6. You may put a human creature from among them onto battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible. Put the rest of the bottom of the library in random order. So being able to have 3 or 4 non-human tokens just on your turn, being able to go to combat and be able to put a human or 2 in is very big. And I've had as much as 20 to 30 non-humans. And if you're able to do something like that, you kind of just put every human onto the battlefield. Very, very good piece. And Zathrid Necromancer, I believe. 2 colorless, 1 black, human wizard, 2/2. Whenever it or another human creature you control dies, you get a 2/2 zombie that's tapped. So another piece. We're running a bunch of humans. Why not be able to get a bunch of tokens out of them if they die? As you can see from this, a lot of like blast act and board wipe potential. Even if people blow up our boards, it sometimes doesn't even matter. I've had 2 or 3 board wipes in a row happen, and usually I end up with a bunch of tokens still left over, a ton of mana, or sometimes I just accidentally kill the table. You know, having a Broodmoth out and having Cabal out, sometimes you could just accidentally make a ton of tokens because an Elendra dies, you know. So there's a lot of potential for like just draining people out and sneaking out wins. We'll go to the sorcery package. Pretty simple. We have Hour of Reckoning, 4 colorless, 3 white sorcery. It has Convoke, so you can tap creatures to help, and it destroys all non-token creatures. If we have just 20 or so tokens out, sometimes that's enough to just overwhelm our opponents, so we don't really need our creatures. Also, sometimes we just get a ton of death triggers, so it actually ends up being more beneficial to just blow them all up anyway. Ruinous Ultimatum, 2 red, 3 white, 2 black, destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. This is kind of just on theme because it happens to be a Fallout card, but it is very important because sometimes you just have a ton of mana in this deck. Being able to blow up everything off opponents' boards usually ends up in you just winning. And because it's funny, Tempt with Bunnies. 2 colorless, 1 white sorcery as tempting offer. So you get to draw a card and create a bunny. Then each opponent gets the same offer. If they do it, you get to draw another card and create another bunny for each one. So sometimes people don't feed into it, but at worst, you get to create a token and you get to replace it. So usually people find it funny and they create the tokens just because they want to, because it's haha, why not? But we gain a ton of benefit from it, so why not play it? Instant package. Got some sneaky cards in here, so we'll go over them. Boros Charm. It's red and a white. You could hit a player for 4, give your permanents indestructible until the end of turn, or give a creature double strike. All pretty relevant pieces, but usually it's the top 2. Being able to protect your stuff from a board wipe in response to things happening can be massive, but also being able to deal 4 damage to a person sometimes is enough to kill them. So, you know, pretty good piece. Call of the Coppercoats, 2 colorless, 1 white, and it has Strive. So you can actually pay 1 and a white to target a different opponent, or to target an extra opponent if you would like. But you choose target opponent, and you get to create X11 white human soldier creature tokens where X is the number of creatures those opponents control. So this is sometimes just an instant speed win if you have different pieces out. Also, you sometimes can just pay 5 and create 10 to 15 tokens. Pretty good. Chaos Warp, removable piece. Generous Gift, a removal piece. Harsh Subsidence. This was a piece for my Thalis deck that was my favorite card in the deck, and it still remains my number 1 way to win with this deck. For 1, a white and a black at instant speed, you get to deal X damage to target creature or player, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control. I'm telling you, it's not hard to have 20 plus creatures in this deck. You get it pretty fast, pretty early on. This can be an instant speed kill target player. I've had people, or I've had games where I've actually played pieces that it's like, here's a Mirkwood Bats on this deck. And they go, oh crap, I'm going to counter that. I go, in response, I'm just going to kill you so that my Mirkwood Bats can resolve and I could win. Really, really, really underrated card. Path to Exile, we all know what that does. Rise of the Dreadmon, really, really gross card in the deck. I try not to play it for its Foretell cost because it's the only foretold deck or card in the deck. So, after you play it once, everybody kind of gets what it is. But you get to create X 2/2 zombie berserk creature tokens, where X is the number of non-token creatures that died this turn. Being able to just have the board wiped and then create 20 2/2s is sometimes enough to just close out the game. Secure the Wastes. It's 1 and X, or white and X, and you just get to create X 1/1s at instant speed. Sometimes could win you the game. Also, if you have nothing else going on, you get to keep up, create 10 tokens. Pretty crazy. And then Wear and Tear, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment. You could pay colorless, a red, and a white to do both if you would like. Artifacts, pretty simple package. We have I'll go through the rocks real quick. We have Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, Orzhov Signet. We have a Soul Ring, Talisman of Conviction, Talisman of Hierarchy, Indulgence, and Thought Vessel. They're all mana rocks. Not much to talk about there. Conqueror's Flail, for 2 colorless. It's an equipment that the creature gets +1/+1 for each color amongst permanents you control, which is usually going to be 3. But most importantly, as long as it's attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. This allows you to really easily prevent people from interacting with your board and being able to push into a winning board state. Also, giving something +3/+3 is really relevant. Taking different pieces out of kill range or just buffing pieces can really help out. Idol of Oblivion, probably the best card in this deck, right next to Harsh Substance, honestly. For 2 colorless, you get an artifact. You can tap to draw a card, only if you created a token this turn. And it has the ability to pay 8 to sack it to create a 10/10. Doesn't really matter. Being able to tap this to draw a card, it quickly and easily outpaces itself. You're going to be creating tokens every single turn, so you get a free draw every single turn. Lightning Greaves, equip the creature, gets haste and shroud. Really nice to put on your commander. Really nice to put on Cabal. Really nice to put on Mirkwood Bats. Just good protection piece. Skull Clamp. For 1, you get an equipment that you can attach it to a creature. Equipped creature gets +1, -1. Whenever an equipped creature dies, you draw 2. You can use this to just pay 1, draw 2 by equipping it to a 1/1 token that you don't care about. You could use this to get a bunch of death triggers on your cards that you need for your turn to be able to get around different things and win, Or, I guess there's really no other or. I guess you could put it on your commander or different pieces that you think people are likely to destroy. Staff of the Storyteller, 1 colorless, 1 white. When it ETBs, you create a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying. Whenever you create 1 or more creature tokens, you get to put a counter on it, and you could pay a white, tap it, remove a counter to draw a card. It's just a nice piece, kind of like Idol of Oblivion. It just existing is going to be good enough to give you some card draw, which in these colors is nice to have repeated card draw. Black has a lot of ways to be able to target you to draw more and do different things like that, but it's really nice to have pieces that are solidified, continued engines of card draw so that I don't fall behind. So that's it for the artifact package. We only have 5 enchantments to go over. We'll bust through them real quick. Bitter Blossom, colorless and a black. It's an enchantment. Beginning my upkeep, I'm going to lose a life and create a 1/1 fairy rogue creature token with flying. Curse of Opulence. I get a curse an opponent. Whenever that player is attacked, that player who attacked him gets to create a gold, and I get to create a gold token. Impact Tremors. Ugh, gross card. Colorless and a red enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, deal 1 damage to each opponent. We'll skip over that for a second, but the Leader's Call is the exact same thing. It gives creatures +1/+1. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. These are cards that are like, if I drop them, you're probably done that turn, maybe even next turn. including putting pieces like Secure the Waste in with those. You're able to just create enough to kill people. Or, hey, you blew up the board, I'm going to create 20, tutus or 10 tutus and hurt everybody, and also have a board state. So these two pieces are definitely like, hey, kill on sights for this deck. And then welcome to colorless 1 white. Whenever a creature mana value 3 or less enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card, triggers once each turn. So this is just another piece. It exists. I'm going to keep getting card draw. Land package is pretty simple. There really isn't much to go over. We have this, I think it's Castle Ardenvale, but it's a different art for it. You could pay 2 and a white to create a 1/1. It's nice to have options like that if you just have free mana laying around, not much to do with it. Here's something that you're able to do with it. And then we also have Vault of the Archangel. You could pay 2 colorless, a white and a black to give all of your creatures Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. This card was a newer inclusion for me, and in my opinion is a staple. Being able to give all of your creatures lifelink is massive, but being able to use that as a blocking piece if you would like is also huge. I've saved myself many times by keeping up 4 mana and this land, and then just telling people, like, if you swing at me, I will Death Touch with all of your stuff. I don't care. If I lose 5/1/1s, I lose 5/1/1s. But if they're 5/1/1s with Death Touch, you're losing more than I am. So it's pretty much straightforward deck. I have some other pieces that I've tested out or tried in this part of the list. Most of these pieces were either just not as impactful, or maybe I felt like they just cost too much. Things like Rise of the Dark Realm, definitely 9 mana to be able to do it is just a bit much for this deck. Usually have more meaningful things to do. I just don't own a Charismatic Conqueror, but I think that card would also be amazing in this deck. And I had Lotho, but I didn't like that I was losing a little bit too much life, so I wanted to take out one piece. And I traded this to my friend because he wanted it for his experience counter deck. But as you can see, again, like most of my decks, it consists of a clear and cohesive strategy, all built towards one thing with a sub theme inside of it. And you could easily take out some of these pieces that maybe don't seem as good for you. If you don't like Rose, or if you don't like Broodmoth, you can easily replace them with more token generators and stuff like that. But the deck is pretty sweet. It's probably my strongest casual deck, honestly. Again, it's like the Helga deck that will probably come out before this. If not, spoilers, I'm posting a Helga deck video. But Helga and this also become decks where it's like not really much is going on. They're both, wait, hold on, go back a second. What does that do? And then you're dead. So very strong, very impactful deck. If you guys have any questions about it, let me know in the comments down below. If this deck interests you and you have any questions about it, also go ahead and ask. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good day. I'll be back with another video soon. Peace.